Noddy at the Seaside by Enid Blyton. One morning, when little Noddy was still fast asleep in bed, somebody rode a bicycle up the path to his front door. Rat-a-tat-a-tat! Somebody banged so hard on the knocker that little Noddy woke up in a hurry and almost fell out of bed in fright. His little wooden head began to nod madly. "Oh dear, who's that knocking? I was fast asleep. Rat-a-tat-a-tat-a-tat! Come in, come in, come in!" shouted Noddy, beginning to dress in a hurry. The door burst open, and in came Big Ears, Noddy's friend. He had left his little bicycle outside and was smiling all over his face. "Oh, it's you, Big Ears," said Noddy in surprise. "I thought it must be somebody who wanted me to drive them somewhere in my little car, in a great hurry. What do you want to come banging on my door like that for, so early in the morning?"
"I've come to breakfast with you because I've thought of a plan," said Big Ears. "Do hurry up and dress, Noddy. I'll get the breakfast and then I'll tell you about my plan." Noddy put on his blue shorts, his red shirt, and tied his yellow scarf round his neck. He began to feel rather excited. Big Ears' plan must be a good one if he had to come to breakfast. Big Ears found 2 eggs and began to boil them. He cut some bread and butter. "Where's your milk?" he said.
"Oh, I drank it all up last night," said Noddy. "The milkman will be here in a minute." Sure enough, there came a shout outside the door.
"Milko! Milko!"
Big Ears went to the door.
2 bottles of milk, please," he said.
The milkman gave them to him. Big Ears put his hand into his pocket to get some money. Noddy called out at once, "No, Big Ears, no, that's not how I pay the milkman. Come in, milkman, and take your payment." The milkman walked in with a grin and tapped Noddy's little head smartly. It began to nod very quickly indeed.
"Payment for 1 bottle?"
said the milkman. He tapped Noddy's head again as soon as it began to stop nodding and made it nod again, up and down, up and down.
"Payment for 2 bottles," he said.
"Thank you. Good day."
"Good gracious! Is that how you pay for your milk?" said Big Ears in great surprise. "I wish I had a nodding head and could pay like that."
"Well, the milkman just loves to nod my head as fast as he can," said Noddy, tying up his shoes. "I have to pay him a lot more nods for cream, though. It's not so cheap as milk."
"Come along, breakfast is ready," said Big Ears. "Do hurry up, Noddy. You've washed, you've cleaned your teeth, you've done your hair. I simply can't wait to tell you my plan." Noddy sat down and tapped his egg hard on the top. "Now tell me," he said, "is it a beautiful one?" "Yes," said Big Ears. "I've come to say that we ought to have a holiday, and we ought to go to the seaside at once this very day because it's such lovely weather. We can paddle."
"What's paddle?" said Noddy, looking excited. "And where's the seaside, and what is it?"
"Oh, Noddy, I keep forgetting how little you know," said Big Ears. "The seaside is a lovely place. It's got heaps of yellow sand and a lot of blue water, and you dig in the sand and paddle in the water. And you go right into it too, up to your neck if you like."
"I don't like," said Noddy, looking rather scared. "I don't even go up to my neck in the bath."
"Oh, don't be silly, Noddy," said Big Ears. "You love it all. Everyone likes holidays."
"They sound sort of prickly," said Noddy, finishing up his egg.
Big Ears laughed and laughed. "Not holidays made of prickly holly," he said. "Oh dear, you're always so nice and silly, Noddy. Will you come? We can go together today in your little car."
"Oh, yes, I'll come anywhere with you, dear Big Ears, because you're my friend," said Noddy, beaming at him. "Let's leave all the washing up and go to the seaside at once. Now, this very minute, immediately."
Big Ears wouldn't go till they had washed up,
made Noddy's bed, and put everything tidy.
There, your little house looks nice, he said. Noddy, put your pyjamas into a bag, and your toothbrush, sponge, soap and flannel. And take the money that is in your money box. I've got mine too, quite a lot.
Noddy began to feel very excited indeed. He took out his money and gave it to Big Ears to keep safely for him. He patted his little bed and said goodbye to it. "I wish I could take you with me, bed," he said. "But goodbye till I come back again." "Big Ears, do we sleep in beds at the seaside?"
No, I've got another plan about that, said Big Ears. You'll love it. Now stop saying goodbye to everything, Noddy, and come along. Listen, there's your little car hooting for you in its garage.
Pop, pop, pop. Yes, that was Noddy's little car, longing to be taken out into the sunshine for a drive. Big Ears and Noddy went out, and Noddy slammed his front door behind him. He got out his dear little car and drove it onto the roadway. Big Ears wheeled out his bicycle. "Are you going to ride to the seaside on your bicycle?" said Noddy in surprise.
No, it's too far, said Big Ears. I'll tie it on the back of the car.
So he did. And here they go together in Noddy's little car through the streets of Toyland. How excited they look! Miss Fluffy Cat waved her sunshade at Noddy. "Stop! Stop, Noddy! I want you to take me to the station!" she cried. "Can't stop! Can't stop!" shouted Noddy. "I'm taking myself to the seaside for a holiday." And on he went at top speed. Then Mr. Wobbly Man hailed him.
Noddy, stop! I want a lift.
"Can't stop! Can't stop! I'm off to the seaside!" shouted Noddy. "Pop, pop!" said the little car excitedly, and jerked high into the air over a rut in the road.
Tell the car to be sensible, said Big Ears. There goes my hat, jerked right off my head. Stop, car, stop!
The car stopped with such a jolt that Big Ears fell out. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry," said Noddy very fast. "That's the worst of this car. It always gets excited when I do." Big Ears picked up his hat from the road and got back into the car. They went off again, and little Noddy began to sing. "We're off to the sea, Big Ears and me. We'll dig in the sand, oh won't it be grand? We'll paddle and play, oh hip hip hooray."
That's a nice song, said Big Ears. You're very good at making up songs, Noddy. Let's both sing that one together.
So they began to sing it at the tops of their voices, and the car joined in. Pop, 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 pop! Then it gave a leap of joy, and Big Ears almost lost his hat again. There was a loud noise at the back of the car, and then a crash. Big Ears looked round, startled. Then he gave a shout.
Stop, Noddy, stop! My bicycle's fallen off. We're leaving it behind. Stop, I tell you.
Noddy stopped. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, he began. But Big Ears really was cross this time. He ran to pick up his bicycle. Was it hurt or broken? No, thank goodness it wasn't.
I think I'll carry it round my shoulders,
said Big Ears, getting back into the car.
I just couldn't bear to lose my little bicycle. There, I'm ready. And please do drive properly, Noddy. We'll never get to the seaside if we keep dropping things into the road.
Your bicycle wheel is sticking into my neck, said Noddy. I can't nod my head.
Well, never mind, said Big Ears. It will be a nice change for your head not to nod. Look out, Noddy, you nearly went into that cow.
It's so very difficult to drive with a wheel sticking into my neck, said Noddy, and he nearly bumped into another cow. Oh dear, did you see how that cow jumped? It must be the one that was clever enough to jump over the moon. That made Big Ears laugh, and he nearly dropped his bicycle. Then he gave a shout that almost made Noddy drive into some Noah's Ark animals.
Look, a signpost, and it says, "To the seaside." We're nearly there, Noddy. We're nearly there.
Noddy drove on, and then he suddenly stopped the car and stared. "What's that?" he said, pointing to a big, moving mass of bright blue.
It's the sea, said Big Ears, excited. Isn't it lovely?
"It's too big," said Noddy. "Much too big. Let's go and find a dear little sea. This one's too big, and it keeps moving. And what are those things that keep rising up to look at us and then falling over with a big splash?"
They're only waves, said Big Ears. Drive on, Noddy. Get nearer.
Noddy drove down onto the yellow sand. He got out and stared at the big blue sea. He dug his feet into the soft, warm sand. "Where does the sea end?" he said. "It goes on and on and on and on and—"
Don't bother about where it ends, said Big Ears. It begins here anyway. Come on, let's paddle.
"I don't know how to," wailed Noddy, "and I still think the sea's too big. Please, Big Ears, let's go and find a small sea."
You're silly, said Big Ears, and took off his shoes and socks. He turned up his trousers and ran down to the sea. He splashed in the little white-edged waves and shouted for joy. "It's lovely! It's lovely! Come and paddle, Noddy, and make a song about it. Oh, do come and feel the water in between your toes."
Noddy suddenly thought he would. He ran to the sea at top speed, and Big Ears just managed to stop him before he went in with his shoes on. Noddy sat down and took them off. Then he ran to join Big Ears, and the two of them paddled up and down, making splashes as they went. "This is better than splashing in puddles after the rain," said Noddy joyfully. "There's much more water to splash with." "Ooh, that was a big splash, wasn't it, Big Ears? Did I wet you?"
Yes, you did, said Big Ears. Look out, there's quite a big wave coming.
Noddy jumped up and down in the wave joyfully and sang at the top of his voice. "The sea is big, the sea is blue, it's big enough for me and you, it's big enough for everybody. Come and splash with little Noddy." Noddy jumped so high that he suddenly fell over. Splash! There he was, lying in the water, very surprised and rather frightened. "Oh, I'm wet! Oh, the sea's cold! Oh, there's a wave running over me! Help, Big Ears, help!" Big Ears helped him up.
You're wet through, he said. I knew that would happen. I shall take you back home if you do silly things, Noddy.
"Oh, no, no, no," shouted Noddy, beginning to splash about again. "The seaside is lovely, lovely, lovely." "Where are we going to live?" asked Noddy when they sat down to dry their feet on Big Ears' enormous handkerchief. "Are there houses at the seaside?"
Of course, said Big Ears. Look, behind you, up on that cliff there. Lots of houses.
"It's a long way up that cliff," said Noddy, looking at it. "And I want to be near the sea, Big Ears. Let's live down here, on the sand. I like it." He ran his hands through the sand and threw some at Big Ears. It went into his eyes and down his neck. He was very cross.
Don't do that, Noddy, he said. I can't see out of my left eye now. You're unkind.
"I didn't mean to be. I didn't," said Noddy. I won't do silly things any more, Big Ears. Tell me, where are we going to live? Can we live down here on the sand?"
Well, I did think of getting a tent, said Big Ears.
"Oh, yes, let's get a tent," cried Noddy. "I always meant to live in a tent wherever I went."
You didn't, said Big Ears. That's a silly song. Now, I'll go and buy the tent. We can make 2 nice holes in the sand for beds, and another hole to keep our things in, and the tent will give us a fine roof."
"I'll make the holes while you get the tent," said Noddy. "What shall I make the holes with?"
"Scrape them out with your hands," said Big Ears. "I'll bring back spades and pails for us, and shrimping nets, and perhaps a little ship to sail on a pool."
"Oh, Big Ears, I do like being at the seaside," said Noddy, and he began to scrape hard in the sand. "I'll make some lovely beds for us here in the sand. Hurry up and get the tent."
Big Ears went walking up the beach to the steps that led up the side of the steep cliff to the little village above. Noddy worked hard while he was gone. He made 2 nice holes and lay down in each to make sure they were the right size. Then he made a hole to keep their things in. He put his bag there, and Big Ears' bag as well. Big Ears came back just as Noddy had finished his work. He had so many parcels that it was quite difficult to see Big Ears himself. "Tent," he said, throwing down a big parcel, "spades, pails, nets, bathing suits, ship, sandwiches, biscuits, lemonade."
"Good gracious, Big Ears, have you spent all our money?" cried Noddy.
"Not quite," said Big Ears, and began to undo the parcel that held the tent. Soon he was shaking out the little tent and sorting out the small poles and ropes that went with it. Noddy tried to put up the tent, but it kept falling down on him. "Let me do it, Noddy," said Big Ears, and he did it very well indeed. It was a dear little tent. They crawled inside it.
"This is my bed," said Noddy, getting into one sand hole. "And that's yours, Big Ears. Oh, what fun this is!"
He shut his eyes tightly. "Don't go to sleep yet," said Big Ears. "It isn't night time. Look, Noddy, I'm putting all the food into this hole where you've put the bags. The spades and pails and things can go outside on the beach with the car and my bicycle. Now, our holiday has begun."
"It's tea time," said Noddy, feeling for the sandwiches. "We missed our dinner, and now I'm very hungry for tea. Let's sit in the sand outside the tent and have a big tea, Big Ears. Then we'll paddle. I like paddling. I shall paddle all day long."
They sat down in the sand and began to eat their tea. After that, they took a spade each and began to dig.
"I'll make a big castle," said Noddy. "The biggest that ever was made."
"Mine will be bigger," said Big Ears. They both worked very hard indeed, and then sat down for a rest. Noddy stared at the sea. He looked very puzzled.
"Big Ears," he said, "the sea is coming to look at our castles. It's creeping up the beach. It's getting nearer and nearer."
"So it is," said Big Ears, surprised too. "It was very far away from this spot when we arrived, wasn't it? Now it's quite close. Goodness me, do you suppose it really is coming to see what we've built?"
"Well, look, that last little wave almost reached your castle," said Noddy, "and now this next one is licking round it. Big Ears, what shall we do? The sea might take our tent away."
Big Ears got up and pointed at the sea. "Go away, sea," he said in a very stern voice. "Go away, I tell you. Do you hear me?" Well, the sea didn't take any notice at all. It ran all around Big Ears' castle, and then it began to lap at Noddy's.
"It's nibbling it away," said Noddy. "Go away, sea, go away."
some toys over there digging in the sand," said Big Ears. "I'll go and ask them to do something about this annoying sea."
So he went over to two little gollies, a teddy bear and a pink pig, all playing together in the sand.
"Oh, he says the sea came up to look at the castle and won't go away," laughed the teddy bear. "Just you tell it to go back, Brownie." "I did," said Big Ears, "but it took no notice. We're afraid it will take away our tent."
"No, it won't," said a small doll sitting in a nearby deck chair. "The tide will go out again in a minute."
"What's the tide?"
asked Big Ears, who had never heard that the sea runs right up the beach and right down again day after day. He just thought it always stayed in the same place.
"You'll soon learn," said the little doll.
Then Big Ears heard Noddy shouting to him. "Big Ears! Big Ears! It's all right. The sea's doing what you told it, and it's going away again. Come and see." Sure enough, Noddy was right. The sea had left the sandcastles and was gradually going down the beach away from them. The tide was going out. "You're very, very clever, Big Ears," said Noddy. "Even the sea does what you tell it. I'm so glad to have a clever friend like you." That night, they both went to sleep in the little tent. It was warm and comfortable in their sand beds. Big Ears tied back the flap of the tent so that they could see the stars peeping down. "I can hear the sea singing its own song," said Noddy sleepily. "It's a nice song. It goes like this. Here I run a little way, back again I go. Now I'm coming up the sand to catch your little toe. Splishy, splashy, splishy, splash, what a noise I make. All the night I never stop, I keep you wide awake." But the sea didn't keep Noddy and Big Ears awake. They're both as fast asleep as can be. Noddy and Big Ears had such a wonderful time at the seaside. Once they built a most enormous castle, bigger than anyone else's, and Noddy sat on the top of it. The tide came in and the sea swept all around the castle, but Noddy still sat there shouting joyfully. And then, oh dear, such a big wave came that it knocked the castle down and Noddy fell into the water. "Save me! Save me! I'll drown! I can't swim!" he cried. "Get up and walk then!" shouted everybody. So Noddy stood up. And will you believe it? The water was only up to his ankles. So he was quite safe after all, and he paddled quickly to the beach.
"Noddy, if you wet your clothes like this, we shall have to wear bathing suits all the time," said Big Ears.
So after that, they wore their little bathing suits, and Noddy liked his very much. He went bathing in his suit and danced about madly. "Look out, Noddy, here comes a very big wave." I knew he wouldn't see it. Down he goes, and the wave takes him right up the beach and throws him near where Mr. Big Golly is taking a snooze on the sand. Bump! He rolled over on him. Mr. Big Golly woke up with a jump and gave such a shout that Noddy fled away at top speed. He went to Big Ears almost crying. "Tell the waves they're not to knock me over. Tell them, Big Ears." But Big Ears only laughed at him. "Get your shrimping net and come and catch shrimps with me," he said. So off they went with their nets and caught a lot of little shrimps. A kind sailor doll took the shrimps home to his wife and cooked them for Noddy and Big Ears. Then they had shrimp sandwiches for their tea and shared them with Miss Whiskers, a toy kitten, and Tiddles, her boy cousin. "Shrimps taste nice," said Noddy. "I'll catch some more." "Crabs taste nice too," said Tiddles. "You could catch some of those perhaps, and then we could have a crab tea." "How'd you catch crabs?" said Noddy. But nobody knew. "I'm going to paddle," said Noddy after tea. "I'm going to paddle right up to my waist." And off he went, going deeper and deeper into the sea. Then he suddenly gave a loud yell. "Big Ears! Oh, Big Ears, save me! Something's got hold of my foot! Big Ears, come quick! Oh!" Big Ears rushed into the sea at once, quite frightened. What was happening to little Noddy? Who was under the water, clutching at his foot? Noddy fell over in the water when a big wave came. He screamed loudly, Big Ears, come quickly, something has got me." Big Ears waded to him, pulled him up and carried him to the shore. Noddy was still squealing, My foot! Oh, something's got my foot!" And dear me, what was that hanging onto his foot? Why, a great big crab, holding on with its claws, pinching poor Noddy hard. Tiddles pulled it off, and how he laughed. "Oh, it's a crab! Oh, Noddy, you wanted to catch a crab, and you have?" "I didn't catch it, it caught me," wept Noddy, rubbing his foot. "Horrid crab! I'll cook you and have you for my supper. Oh, Big Ears, it did pinch my foot." Big Ears put a fine bandage on Noddy's foot. "Now I'll get that bad crab," said Noddy fiercely, standing up. But the crab was nowhere to be seen. It had run off into a nearby pool, and nobody knew where it was. It didn't mean to be eaten for Noddy's supper. "Well, you won't want to catch crabs again," said Miss Whiskers. "And mind you look out for lobsters too, Noddy. They pinch worse than crabs." "And don't catch jellyfish," said Tiddles with a grin. "They sting." "I don't think the seaside is such a very nice place after all," said Noddy sadly. "Don't be silly," said Big Ears. "You go and get your little ship and we'll sail it. We'll soon forget about the crab." So here they are, sailing the ship. It floats beautifully, and when the wind takes the sail, the boat goes right to the very end of Noddy's string. "It's perfectly plain you're happy again," said Big Ears, and laughed. "In fact, I'm sure you are happy once more. There, Noddy, I've made up a little rhyme this time. Aren't I clever?" Now, one day, the wind blew and clouds came over the sky. The sea was grey instead of blue, and the waves were so very big that Noddy was frightened of them. It was too cold to wear bathing suits, so Noddy and Big Ears wore all the clothes that they had got. "Look, Noddy," said Big Ears suddenly. "There's a boat out there on the rough sea. Who's in it? It looks like 2 small teddy bears, and Miss Whiskers, and Tiddles, her cousin, and a doll. How silly of them to go boating on such a rough day." "Oh, Big Ears, the boat is rocking to and fro. And look, that big wave went right over it," cried Noddy. "Big Ears, there'll be a shipwreck. The boat will go over and sink to the bottom of the sea." "Oh, dear, what can we do?" said Big Ears. "Noddy, the boat has gone over, right over, and everyone's in the sea. Oh, what shall we do?" I'll go and rescue them," said Noddy at once, but Big Ears held on to him tightly. "No, of course not. You'd be drowned too. Nobody can stand up against those big waves." "Oh, but Big Ears, look at the poor things tossing about in the water," wailed Noddy. "Oh, poor Tiddles, poor Miss Whiskers, poor—" Then a noise behind them made them jump. Pop, 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 pop. And will you believe it? Noddy's car rushed by them at top speed and ran straight into the water. "Come back! Come back!" shouted Noddy. But the brave little car took no notice. It plunged into the big waves and drove itself through the sea to where the boat had turned over. "It's got to Tiddles! He's climbing in!" cried Noddy, dancing up and down in joy. "Now he's helping little Miss Whiskers in. Now the car's gone to pick up the 2 small teddy bears." "And now it's gone to the little doll," said Big Ears. "Oh, she can't climb in. There isn't room." "Oh, yes there is. Tiddles has got her on his lap. Now the car's turning itself round again." "It's coming back. It's rescued everybody," cried Noddy. "Oh, my dear, brave little car." A lot of people were now on the beach watching. How they cheered and shouted when the little car ran up the sand with all the shipwrecked toys quite safe. "Pop, pop," it said proudly. "Pop, pop." "Oh, Miss Whiskers, your fur is so wet," said Noddy. He got a towel to dry her. Everyone crowded round, talking and cheering. Hurrah! The brave little car had saved everyone. It stood there, dripping wet, saying, "Pop, pop," whenever anyone patted it. The toys were taken to their homes to be dried and put to bed to get over their shock. Noddy and Big Ears dried the little car. Then Noddy wheeled it to its usual place on the beach. It made a curious creaking noise and went very slowly.
"Being in the sea water hasn't done it any good," said Big Ears. "What a pity. Oh dear, I wish this wind would stop blowing. I'm so afraid that my 2 big ears will be blown away."
"Let's get into the tent," said Noddy. "If the wind gets much blowier, we'll find ourselves up in the sky. My goodness, I daren't leave hold of my hat." Now that night wasn't at all nice. The wind blew very loudly and roughly. It blew sand into the tent. It blew a big wave right into the opening, and Noddy got his feet wet. He was very angry. "What do you mean by coming into our tent, see?" he said. "You've never done that before. Wind, be quiet. You're making such a noise that I can't go to sleep." But the wind wouldn't be quiet. It howled, it wailed, it shouted round the tent and pulled at the ropes that held it safe. The tent shook and shivered, and so did Big Ears and Noddy. "I wish we were back at home in my dear little house," said Noddy, "or in your toadstool house, Big Ears. I do really." And then, just as he said that, something happened. The wind pounced down on the tent, pulled out all the ropes, and whipped the whole tent away into the night. Just fancy that. Noddy and Big Ears didn't know what had happened for a minute. They suddenly felt very cold, and then Big Ears saw the stars in the sky above him.
"Our tent's gone," he cried. "Noddy, the wind has taken away our tent."
Noddy put out his hand to feel the tent, but it wasn't there, of course. All he did was to put his fingers into Big Ear's eye by mistake. "Oh, I'm sorry, he said. "Oh, Big Ears, I'm frightened. Our tent is gone. Can I please cuddle up to you in case I'm blown away too?"
"Yes," said Big Ears,
and he let Noddy creep into his kind, friendly arms. The wind blew roughly over them, and the bell at the end of Noddy's hat tinkled loudly all the time. It really was a very horrid night. In the morning, Big Ears sat up and looked round. Was the car safe? Yes. There it was, looking very miserable. It made a strange noise when Big Ears looked at it. He awoke Noddy.
"Noddy, I think the car's got a bad cold. I'm sure it's trying to cough. Poor thing, it's been standing out all night in this dreadful cold wind after getting a soaking yesterday when it rescued those toys from the sea."
"Oh dear," said Noddy, sitting up too. "Is there any sign of our tent, Big Ears?"
"No, it's gone forever, I'm sure," said Big Ears sadly. "But we've still got the car, and my bicycle is safe. It's half buried in sand, look."
"What a horrid, horrid night," said Noddy. "Big Ears, what are we going to do? Please think hard. You're the clever one, you know. What are we going to do?" Big Ears pulled his hat down hard so that the wind couldn't whip it off his head.
"We're going home," he said. "That's what we're going to do, little Noddy. Our holiday is over, and it's time to go back."
"Of course! Why didn't I think of that too?" said Noddy joyfully. "Home again! How lovely that will be!"
"You see, the weather isn't nice for living out of doors in a tent anymore," said Big Ears.
"And we haven't got a tent now," said Noddy.
"And our money has come to an end,"
said Big Ears. "So we must go home and earn some more," said Noddy. "That would be nice. It's good to work hard and earn lots of money."
And your car is still very wet and has caught a dreadful cold, said Big Ears.
Yes, and I really ought to clean it well and look at its insides to put them right, said Noddy. Oughtn't I, little car? Poop, said the car in a very hoarse, sad voice. It couldn't even say pop, pop.
Well, it seems to me that it would be a very good and exciting thing to go back home, said Big Ears. We've had a lovely time, but that's come to an end. We'll say goodbye to all our friends here and leave this morning.
So they piled their luggage into the little car, tied Big Ear's bicycle firmly to the back so that it wouldn't fall off, and said goodbye to all their friends. Goodbye. We'll come again another time, called Noddy and Big Ears. Goodbye, and goodbye, dear little car, too, called everyone. Hurry up and get rid of your cold. Poop, said the car bravely, and went off rather slowly. Big Ear's bicycle was quite safe this time because the little car didn't feel well and simply could not go fast. And then at last they got home. The car said, poop, quite loudly when it saw its own little garage again, and the noise made Mr. and Mrs. Tubby Bear look out of their window. How excited they were to see Noddy and Big Ears back again. Oh, how we've missed you, they cried, hugging them both. Did you have a nice holiday? Oh, we must have a tea party this very afternoon to welcome you home. Noddy went into his little house. It did look so nice. My own little house for one, he said. I've come back and I won't go away again for a long time. I really won't. Well, the news soon went round that Noddy and Big Ears had come home again, and how excited everyone was. Miss Fluffy Cat came with a big bunch of flowers. Mr. Wobbly Man came with some ripe plums. Big Jumbo arrived with a new chocolate cake balanced carefully on the tip of his trunk. Monkey came with an enormous bottle of homemade lemonade. Oh, really, everyone is so kind, said Noddy, almost crying for joy. Why did we go away from such kind friends, Big Ears?
To have a holiday, of course, said Big Ears. It was nice having a holiday, and it's nice coming home again. Noddy, your little car is better already. I heard it saying pop, pop quite properly just then. I expect it feels happy to be back in its own garage.
I think we ought to ask all your friends to our little tea party and make it a big one, said kind Mrs. Tubby Bear, seeing all the presents that kept arriving. Then everyone can share in your welcome home. So now they're having a perfectly wonderful tea party, and Noddy and Big Ears are as happy as can be. Even Mr. Plod the policeman came, and when he heard about the lost tent, he promised to do his best to get it back.
But if he gets it back, don't you go rushing off on holiday again, said Mr. Golly.
Oh, no, I won't, said little Noddy happily. I don't feel as if I ever want to go away again now. You're all so kind. Oh, dear, there's a song coming. I can feel it.
Let it come, said Big Ears, smiling, and Noddy stood up and sang.
How nice it is to go away and have a lovely holiday. And yet, although it's fun to roam, it's even better coming home. Coming home, coming home. It's really lovely coming home. Well, that was a good song for an ending, wasn't it? How does Noddy think of his songs? No wonder everyone is clapping him and calling for more. Good old Noddy. We'll hear about you some other time. So have some more adventures, won't